So I spent hundreds of hours trying to find deals on houses to flip and houses to rent out on the MLS. And at the time, it was a terrible market in that prices were super high. I couldn't get a deal. And I basically just spun my wheels for a couple of years until I heard about the land business. And not just the land business, but there's a specific type of list you can get from any county in the country called a delinquent tax list.
Yeah.
And it's a list of all the people, all the properties in that county that have back due property taxes owing. So they still own the property. It's not the tax sale list. That's something different.
All right. Hi, guys. This is Julian Castle with the Real Estate Investors Group. Today, I have a very special guest, Seth Williams. He is at REtipster.com, and he's going to tell us about what he would do if he were to lose it all and start again. So, Seth, thank you for coming on, and tell us, what would you do?
Yeah. Hey, Julian. Thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. Glad to be here. So, yeah, if I lost everything, I mean, if we're just talking strictly like monetarily speaking, like if my bank account went to zero all of a sudden, but if I still had my same brain and I still had my same network of people and all of that stuff, I don't think it'd be that. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, but I don't think it would be that difficult. I mean, there's a bunch of different triggers I could pull. I mean, a big one would be using my existing network. I mean, I know a bunch of people who would like instantly do a deal with me like that, just because they know, like, and trust me. I have history with them and that kind of thing. Even if I had no money to bring to the table, I mean, I have a lot of knowledge in terms of how to find a deal. I can also help different people from my network help each other. And in some cases, I could probably insert myself in there, earn some kind of a fee from that. Or also just, just understanding how direct mail marketing and text marketing works and that kind of thing. That doesn't require a little bit of money. So, I mean, I'd have to have some seed capital to start with, but not a ton of money to start finding off-market deals and opportunities that way. So,
Gotcha. So you suddenly lose everything, and you would go ahead and start by finding the deal and tapping in with people who you can do deals with.
Yeah. Yep.
And doing some direct marketing and text blasting.
Yep. And even, I mean, I guess this is the benefit of doing this for a while and getting to know a lot of people. And because through the knowledge I've got and the connections I have, I could either play the part of finding the deal, or I could almost kind of take on like a consultant role of like just overseeing the project, almost like a producer of a movie or a song. Like I can just sort of understand, like, this is the quality of the deal. I think maybe we could pivot in this way and make more in this fashion by doing this kind of angle. And it's actually really cool. Like when you've done this for a while, it gets substantially easier, I guess. I always hesitate to use the word easy, but much easier than when I was getting started and I knew nobody and I knew nothing and I had very little money. That was definitely the hardest point. But once you kind of get these different non-monetary assets going, you can leverage a lot of those to get pretty far pretty fast.
Yeah, gotcha. So let's see. Can you walk us a step-by-step process that you would do to find a deal, given that you had no connections already, but you had all the knowledge of how to find a deal?
Sure. Yeah.
So how much money would you need to get? Obviously you have, you suddenly lose everything. So you're at zero. So how much would you need to get started? And then how would that process go?
Yeah, sure. So assuming I know exactly what I'm doing, I probably would need about $5,000, maybe a little less than that, in order to put together a direct mail campaign, in order to find the list and whittle it down correctly and craft the right message. I say craft, I really just use a template that I have that I know works. And, use a mail service to send that mail out and have them respond to me. And it's not, I mean, those are like the basic motions to go through, but there's a lot of different details baked into each one of those steps, like in terms of where do you get the list and how do you filter it, depending on what types of properties you're looking for and which market should you be doing this in the first place. And what do you say on it? What was that?
You can go into that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with the market where I live in Michigan. Like I understand a lot about land values because vacant land is the primary type of property that I would be going after. but also other states I've worked in, New Mexico and California. And there's different ways you can assess how active a market is and how quickly you'll be able to sell land. Because with land, that's usually the biggest bottleneck. Not always, but a lot of times that's the hardest part, because it doesn't sell as quickly as a house does. So you want to be able to work in a market where there is a demand for vacant land, like people are actively trying to build. There's not a bottleneck in the construction market, and people can actually build pretty quickly. And you can do a lot of that by doing some pretty basic research on a website like Zillow or LandWatch to understand how many transactions are happening. And even of the properties that are listed for sale, are they getting a lot of views? Like, are people favoriting those properties a lot? How many days on the market are they sitting before they sell? You can see wild differences in different parts of the country. Like in a random part of Indiana, you might see that a property gets 7 views over the course of a month. And in California, the same property might get thousands of views in a month. And that kind of indicates the level of interest and how many people are actively looking for that kind of property. So if you suddenly own one of those properties and you're trying to sell it, it implies they'll probably sell this thing faster because there's more people who are looking for it. And it also helps to get the help of a local land specialized real estate agent who can really give you a lot of insider knowledge that you won't have on your own, being somebody who might be not in the same market. And they can just tell you, like, yeah, this is a good deal. I would buy this at this price, and you'll sell it in this time frame if you list it for this amount. And you get a lot of help, and it's free help until the thing sells. And then by the time you pay them their commission, they've already done more than enough to earn that because they've helped in a big way.
Got it. And so are you bidding in these lands at a lower price than what is the comps?
Yeah, I mean,
how are you making money?
Well, the idea is to understand the approximate value of land in that area based on the size and the property you're looking at. And that can be kind of tricky because sometimes the data that you need to get a perfect comp just isn't there. So you kind of have to wing it a little bit. But generally, the offer price that I would be buying that for would be maybe 30 to 40% of its current market value. In the current market conditions, that's about that's what I would consider to be a good deal that would give me enough margin to then do nothing to the property in most cases, and then turn around and list it for sale for maybe 70, 80, maybe even 100% of market value and sell it within, 3 to 6 months in most cases, sometimes faster.
Gotcha. And do you implement any kind of financing?
I don't, but that doesn't mean you can't. Vacant land can be, depending on the size and the value of the property, can be a little bit trickier to get financing on that to buy it. Most banks don't want to mess with that until the value gets north of 50, 100,000. That's when banks start to get more interested in that. But even then, my goal is to not really go into debt on these things at all, to just buy them free and clear, which you can usually do when you're paying 30 to 40% of market value for them.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, got it. So that would be the process. Basically, find these $5,000 and then get a direct mail campaign going with a template that would work. And then go ahead and get a deal by talking to a broker in the area that brokers land. And
I mean, finding the deal, like finding the acquisition opportunity, would be me dealing directly with the private owner. So I'm not looking for land for sale on the MLS. I'm actually trying to find somebody who owns land that they don't want. And and those deals can be found, usually when you're doing at scale, sending out thousands of mailers at a time. And also that $5,000 number, I should also just do a caveat. So if I was doing this from scratch with no knowledge of any of this, like my first time through, I'd probably want a little bit more buffer in there. Like 10,000 would be a better number to start with, because I would probably make some mistakes, and that would give me some wiggle room to not be totally dead in the water once I make one of those mistakes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. All right. And given what is the average transaction profit?
Yeah, it just depends on the sizes of properties you want to go after. For me, it's buying a property for $5,000 and selling it for maybe 20,000, or buying it for 10,000 and selling for 30,000. Like that would be a pretty normal transaction size.
Okay.
But there's people who do much bigger things than I do, and they'll buy for, 600,000 and sell it for $1 million. So kind of just depends on what you decide to target. And if you do decide to go after those bigger properties, it obviously takes more money. And that's where people would probably want to have some kind of a financing partner, maybe a bank, depending on the property, might be interested in that, or even a private money lender who would like pay for the entire acquisition, and then they would split the profits 50-50, because you've got the money partner and then you've got the active investor who's actually finding the deal. So I haven't done a lot of that size property, but there are some people who do that.
Got it. Cool. And so that sounds good. And so tell us, how long have you been doing land flipping?
I got started in early 2009. And at the time I had $3,000 to my name, and things were quite a bit less competitive back then. And it was also a very different market back then. My typical offer was like 10% of market value. And it was a lot easier to find deals, but a lot slower to sell them. So I was just kind of fiddling around with this and sending out postcards, and it would usually take about 300 to 500 mailers to get one deal from that. And the deal size would be, usually I'd buy for a few $1,000 and sell it for like $8,000 or $10,000. Like that would be an average deal for back then. And that was great at the time, because I didn't have a lot of money and I didn't really like risk. And I didn't have to go into debt for anything. And I didn't make gobs and gobs of money, but I made more than my day job was paying me at the time. And I was doing this in my spare time. And, as time went on, I just kept doing bigger deals and then more deals. And the rest is history. And then I started REtipster in late 2012 as a way to kind of just show people what I was up to and what was working for me and what wasn't. And that's been a lot of fun.
That's been a lot of fun. Nice.
Yeah.
And so tell us now, what is, now how many deals do you do a month, or like at the peak, for example? And could you also tell us a little bit about the operational, like, have you the operationalized part of your business? Are you still, is it just you solo, or do you have now people who are working with you?
Yeah, sure. So like at the peak, I was probably doing like 50-ish deals per year. And these days I'm doing more like, a half a dozen, maybe a dozen deals at the most per year, because I focus most of my time on REtipster and, content creation. And I just have a lot of fun with that. And what was the other question? The operation, like if it's just me or a team. And so for me right now, it's just me on the land side. And that definitely limits me. The reason I keep it to just me is because I've intentionally, consciously made the choice to not do a huge amount of volume. And that's manageable to do that number of deals with just me. But it does keep me very busy trying to do that and REtipster, and then also trying to start a self-storage business too. I've got a lot on my plate right now. So I think if you're trying to do land full time, like if that's your main thing and you want to make millions from it, then definitely you'll want to build some kind of a team or some kind of virtual assistants or contractors to help you out, depending on which marketing method you're using and whether or not you're using the help of an agent to sell your vacant lots. Depends on those things, but it would be pretty hard to grow a big business like that just by yourself.
Yeah, I can see that. Cool. So, moving on to REtipster. What has been the vision for REtipster? And
REtipster is
REtipster.
REtipster has. I got the idea to start the blog back in 2012 when I discovered another blogger at the time named Pat Flynn, who ran a website called, I think he still runs it, called smartpassiveincome.com. It has nothing to do with real estate, but I just saw what he was doing and I was blown away by it, because he was giving away like truly helpful content that was worth paying for, but it was all free. And I was just like, why is he doing this? And how is he doing this? And at the time he would post these income reports where he would explain he would show how much money he was making from his blog. And he was making like 6 figures a month from his blog, where I never felt like I was being sold on anything. And I never bought much of anything. I mean, he would occasionally put like affiliate links and stuff like that in there. But I was just like, this is awesome. And I really, I admired, I guess, who he was as a person. I saw a lot of myself in him because he just had a lot of similarity. Like, he didn't seem like this cocky, arrogant guy who's like flashing dollar bills everywhere. It was just very like down to earth and real. And I was like, I could do that for what I know in real estate. I'm going to give it a go. And so I did it. And as I started making blog posts and videos, it was a ton of work, but I realized in that process that like, this is really fun for me. Like, I never thought this would be fun. Like, I barely made it through English in college. I almost flunked out of college because I was so bad at it. But once I really cared about it and I saw the importance of it, I don't know, it became a lot more fun to find not easy, but simple, sort of packaged answers to fairly complex problems that I had to figure out on my own. And I was able to take those things and kind of serve up those solutions to other people and find creative ways to monetize those along the way. Sometimes there's no monetization at all. It's just totally free stuff. But other times there's creative ways that I can make money from it while also serving people and being true to them. And they don't have to buy it in order for me to help them. Like, tons of people have made tons of money without paying me anything, which I think is pretty cool. So that's kind of how REtipster works.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how many people do you have in your community now?
Yeah, it kind of depends on which thing you look at. On Facebook, I think we've got like north of 6,000 people in that group. On YouTube, there's about 58,000 subscribers there.
Mm-hmm.
Our email list is like 20,000 people, and it just kind of depends on how you measure that. But the thing is, with vacant land, it's a pretty small niche. There's not a lot of people. I mean, there's more people every year talking more and more about it because the opportunity is kind of getting out there. But it's still a pretty small community. Like, I feel like there's, I don't know, maybe a few thousand people who are like actively doing this. It's not like Bigger Pockets where there's hundreds of thousands of people who are out there. So it's a fairly tight knit group. And usually when I see another land investor's name out there, it's like, oh yeah, I recognize that name. I've seen them before. So it doesn't have to be a massive community when it's a fairly tight knit group and a small niche like that.
Got it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And do you have I guess we might have walked over this, but at your peak when you were doing like 50 deals a year,
mm-hmm.
like what were you in the 6 figures a month?
Yep. Not per month, but it was probably a couple $100,000 a year kind of thing. So,
okay, cool.
And this was again, this for me, land has always been a part-time thing. Like, I've never done this full-time where it's the only thing I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
So I did my land business for years while I was working a full-time job. And then when I quit my job, I continued doing land as I was doing REtipster stuff. So I always had like another thing that I was doing alongside it. But that's what's really cool about land is like, it doesn't have to be your full-time thing. And you can still do really well just plugging away in your spare time. And granted, making that kind of money took literally all of my spare time. Like, I didn't have a whole lot of margin there at the end of the day. But if you're somebody who, like I was, where you're kind of in a job that you don't want to be in anymore and you want to do something else, but you don't want to take a ton of risk and you don't have a ton of money, land is perfect for that because you don't have to take huge risks and you don't need hundreds of thousands just to, open up your doors and start operating.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's awesome. And so going back to your community, some of your students, do you have a coaching program?
I don't do coaching myself. I've got a handful of coaches that I kind of point people to when they ask for that. But the main thing that I do is actually I made a video about this earlier this year. So I used to offer coaching to people like years ago, but I found out pretty early on, I don't know if I'm just not wired for that, but I don't really enjoy it that much. I think it's because it's not very scalable. Like, I have to work one-on-one with somebody or maybe a few people at a time. But I can't control if they're going to do anything with that. And even if they're paying me a bunch of money, it feels like when I see somebody not take action, which absolutely does happen, it's just like, man, that was kind of a waste. And for me, I sort of prefer working on one piece of content that very thoroughly answers one question and addresses one problem that can be seen by thousands of people. And a lot of those people don't have to pay me anything. They can still get help, even though, I put a lot of work into that. And so what I do is I have a few courses that I put together that's mostly based on this content that I've created over the past decade, where instead of just having a bunch of different videos and blog posts all over the place, I organize it very clearly into step-by-step process on, you want to start a land flipping business? Here's what you do. All of this and this and this. And that's stuff that I've put together over a long period of time. So that's, for me, it's more courses and then various, very specifically chosen affiliate promotions where it's like, this is the phone service that I use. I use OpenPhone, and here's how OpenPhone works. And if you want to sign up, here's how to get started. Here's why I do it. Here's my voicemail script. Here's this thing and that thing. So people can kind of, I can make a little bit of money if somebody signs up through OpenPhone, through my affiliate link. But even if they don't, even if they sign up for something else, they can still learn a lot through what I'm explaining how to do through OpenPhone. You could take that and apply it to whatever else you're using.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I want to highlight some of the students. Can you share some case studies from some students that you helped with REtipster?
Sure. Yeah, you got it. Let's see here. So I've got a little thing. It's retipster.com/testimonials, where whenever I hear from people who say that something worked out for them, I put it on there. So there's one guy, George Boomer. He said, we sent out postcards, 500 yellow postcards that are in the course, and we were able to put a parcel under contract for $50,000. It was assessed at $118,000, so they got a pretty good deal on it. And let's see, after the transaction, we were into the property for $52,300. We got 3 calls on it in 5 days, and we put it under contract for $100,000. And just a couple of bandit signs was all it took. Took them 128 days to close. And, after all of the costs and everything were factored in, they made about $45,000. And that was the first deal they ever did. Like, that was them trying to figure out how this works. And they made 45 grand on that first one. So, and that's, I could go on and on. There's tons of stories like this. So I don't know how much more you want me to go, but that's a typical example of somebody who gave it a try. And I'll say that kind of thing, like, that doesn't happen on accident. Like, you need to really want it and try to do it and chase after it. And not everybody experiences that on their first one. It's possible to send out mail and you get no deals from that. That happens, and it's super discouraging when it does happen. But it's one of those things where you can kind of throw in the towel and say, this doesn't work, I give up, or you can keep going. And it's the people that keep going that find those kind of deals.
Yeah. That's an exemplary case study right there.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about more of the origin story. What were you doing before you were doing land flipping, and what got you into it? Was it a person? Was it a seminar?
Yeah. So for me, it was I was trying to figure out how to get into real estate after I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like, so many of us can probably relate to that. This was back in like 2005, 2006. I was still in college, and I read that book, and it kind of blew my mind. And I'm like, this is awesome. There's another way to do this thing and build wealth without just getting a job. And he mentioned real estate in the book, but didn't really explain anything about it. So I spent hundreds of hours trying to find deals on houses to flip and houses to rent out on the MLS. And at the time, it was a terrible market in that prices were super high. I couldn't get a deal. And I basically just spun my wheels for a couple of years until I heard about the land business. And not just the land business, but there's a specific type of list you can get from any county in the country called a delinquent tax list. Yeah. And it's a list of all the people, all the properties in that county that have back due property taxes owing. So they still own the property. It's not the tax sale list. That's something different. It's people
Yeah.
who, if they don't pay the taxes off soon, they're going to lose everything. And I was able to use that list to send out mail to those people specifically. And I found a lot of people would take crazy low offers. And it helped that the real estate market had just crashed about the time I was starting this in early 2009. But I was just blown away because I had worked a long time to find no deals on houses for years. And on my first one or two campaigns, people were saying yes to my offers for 10% of their property value, like left and right. And I was like, this is unreal. And again, it was vacant land. So like there was no dilapidated house, no tenant to kick out. There was nothing getting stolen or destroyed. It was just dirt. And it was amazing how much simpler it was than what I was trying to do with houses. And there was no debt I had to go into. So it was an amazing thing. And yeah, so that was kind of the origin story. And once I saw that work, it was the first thing I ever really found success with in the real estate world. I had tried doing what everybody else tells you to do with houses and stuff, and I found it very difficult. Like I'm frankly not smart enough to flip houses, or not. I can't handle stress enough or something. Like if I were to try to do that right now, I don't think I would make it. But land, it was way more feasible. And the funny thing is, like I almost never have to leave my office to do my land business. Like everything is doable from your computer. It's looking at spreadsheets and Google Earth and getting other sources of property data to do your due diligence. And that's kind of cool. It does make it a little boring in some ways, but boring is kind of good. Just the lack of drama in the business.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm happy you fell into it so like with such a home run, like right off the bat. That really changes your track record for sure, because you obviously you have proof of concept, you know.
And in terms of like home run, it just depends on how you define that. Like the first deal I ever bought was a half-acre parcel that I paid $331 for, and I sold it for $1,900. So I guess it was a home run from an ROI standpoint, but like it wasn't a ton of money. But just the fact that me being kind of a cheapskate and very risk averse, seeing that I was able to buy it free and clear for a few $100 with no debt on it, and make that kind of money in 11 days, listing the property for sale on Craigslist, it was just like, wow, like I could totally do more of this and just do bigger versions of this. And I did.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so now how do you spend your time? So you started doing the land business, and then you know, of course you quit your job, right? Once you found out that this was a good way to make money. And then right after you went into REtipster.
Yep. So is the question just how I spend my time each week or something, or
yeah.
Like
So because I assume the land flipping business, does it take a lot of your time? Just want to get an understanding from that.
So my first year, yes, it was extremely time consuming, mainly because I didn't know what I was doing, and the instruction I got didn't really show me the most effective, time efficient ways to do it. So I wasted tons of time just because I didn't know any better. But these days, it's not terribly time consuming. You can set up a lot of systems that will save tons of time. Like, for example, when people respond to my mail and call me, there's a lot of different efficient ways I can not spend my time talking to those people. I can send them to my website where they can answer questions and submit their property information. I could send them to Pat Live so that another live person asks the questions and gets the information. When sending out mail, like I'm not printing off stuff at home and putting stamps on myself. There's a mail service that does that for me. There's a lot of different automations you can set up that will save a ton of time. And like a lot of the deals I do these days come through my buying website. It doesn't even require direct mail. It just kind of happens. And I can send offers out that way. And a lot of people say no to that, but it's just a way that, even when somebody submits something on my website saying, yeah, I have this property and I think it's worth this amount, my website will automatically reply to that an hour later with an email with an offer price that's a small fraction of the value they told me. So I'm not even researching this stuff. It just sends out these emails. And it's not a contract it's sending out. It's not like a legally binding offer. It's just a number to see if they're interested. And a lot of times they're not. But I don't have to waste my time finding out who's not interested. I can just look my emails and see who replies and says, yes, let's talk more, and go from there. So
Yeah, that's amazing. And
yeah,
so in comparison from the first year now to today, for example, that you
yeah,
have things more operationalized,
yeah,
how much time would you say you spend on it? Just
yeah,
so people getting into it could see what the end goal in terms of time effectiveness
yeah.
could be like.
Yep. So man, that's a really good question. I don't know that I've ever like actually run the calculations on that, but it felt like, and when I look at the time it took to get a deal back then, like factoring all of my wasted time and spinning of wheels, felt like it was, I don't know, maybe like 10 or 12 hours per deal. That's probably totally off, but that's just the number that comes to mind.
Mhm,
Nowadays, it's more like 2 or 3 hours per deal, something like that.
mhm.
And that varies. It depends on like, is there a lot of hair on it? Like, is there a lot of junk you have to figure out and sift through, or is it a pretty clean thing? And how much from doing mail, like how much mail did it take to get that, and how much time did so there's different things like that. But just the variance there, like it's probably 5 times more time efficient now than it used to be when I started. So, and I'm not even doing everything right in terms of like if I really wanted to spend as little time as possible, there's all kinds of CRM systems I could set up, and many people do this, who are doing it full time. Um, that's just kind of my example, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely you spend a lot less time now. And who tell us who are some of your successful case studies, or what kind of people are drawn, what kind of life situations are people in that are drawn to investing in the land flipping business? Now
Yeah,
that you have some data, like who are the usual people that are attracted to this?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I've interviewed a lot of these people on our podcast just because they're really interesting stories. Same reason you're asking the question. I mean, it's interesting just to hear like where did the people come from and how well did they do and how long did it take them. But just like some random examples. So I feel like a lot of people sort of have these white collar jobs, like fairly decent paying jobs, whether it's in like medical sales or accounting or IT or something like that. Like they're doing decent, a middle class, upper middle class job, but similar to me, they're just kind of tired of it, and it doesn't really feed their soul. It's not their highest calling. It's just sort of what they fell into, and they want something else. And a lot of them are, they're halfway decent with computers and spreadsheets. It's not like they're clueless on how to work with Microsoft Excel, so they have a little bit going for them in terms of making sense of that stuff. And a common annual income for these people might be anywhere from like, I don't know, 70 to a couple 100,000 per year at the high end.
Hmm.
And a lot of them, many of them really, I mean, if they decide to go full time and make a serious business out of it, they can totally quit their job and make 3 or 4 times more fairly easily from land within, I don't know, a year or two, depending on how serious they take it and how fast they dive into it. And but on the same coin, we've also interviewed people who, like, one guy was a waiter and decided to do this in addition to being a real estate agent. And
Hmm.
land was really what made the big difference for him. Another guy I've interviewed was a guitar tech for like music bands on the road. Like he would travel with them, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And he would do this when he was at home, not on tour. And he has since quit that job and is doing really well with land. So it's all kinds of different backgrounds, but
Mm.
hopefully they give you some idea.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective on the type of people that join.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so do you have some values you guys do in your community? Like, I want to talk about maybe um, some of the things that it takes to become successful at it. Because, as you say, a lot of people won't do the work, even though it's really valuable, the stuff you put out.
Yeah.
And so, what have you identified from yourself and from people that you've interviewed that makes the difference in the success that they have?
Yeah. Well, I know. I mean, it's hard for me to say what's going on in the minds of everybody who's successful, but I know for me, like
Mm.
I was just hungry for something else. Like I found it the job that I was working when I started this was not a bad job. And as far as jobs go, it was pretty decent.
Mhm.
But I just felt like there's so much more I can do that this job is never going to require of me. And like if I go to my grave and this job is all I ever did, even if I got promoted a time or two, like that would just be tragic. Like this is not me. This is just a means to an end. And I want to do something that enables me to do way more if I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of other people are in a similar spot where like they're working their job not because it's like what they were put on the earth to do. It was just what they fell into. It was just the major they chose in college and they kept doing it or something. I don't know. But um there's the common thread is like there's this hunger for something more. And maybe it's the money, like they want to be rich, but usually it's more the freedom. It's like I want to be able to decide how I'm going to spend my day every day. I don't want to answer to anybody. I want to have money so I can do the next greatest thing. Like land is not the final destination. It's just a stepping stone that's going to give me the cash I need to do something way bigger than my job would ever let me do. So it's those people who, you know, they're hungry for something better and something more, and they're looking for something that works. And it's for me, it was hard to find something that would work for me. Like there's lots of businesses that work, but they require things that I'm not good at or that I'm not willing to do. But
Mhm.
land was something that it allowed me to work within my skill set and do really well at it. So yeah, I guess I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
some
yeah, it
ideas for you.
definitely does. Yeah. Yeah, these people were hungry. They really wanted
Yeah.
to make a change in their lives.
Yep.
And a lot of people do, they work at jobs
Yeah.
and they're not really happy at them, working them. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy thing is like you probably know people like this too, but a lot of people like they never find this thing. Like they just work at their job
mhm.
until they're 60 or 70 or retire and they
Yeah,
never had any fun. It was
yeah,
just a thing they had to do. And it's really tragic when you think about
yeah,
it. The weird thing is like I've got a lot of friends who will like that's basically their situation. Like they're
yeah,
working a job they don't like. They complain about it all the time. The
yeah.
weird thing is like they don't ever like ask me like, how did you do it, Seth? Like, how are you where you're at?
They
Not,
never ask you?
yeah, I mean, some might, but most
Yeah,
of them, I don't know. I don't want to oversimplify, but it almost seems like they'd rather just kind of complain than actually do anything about it. I'm not saying they need to do what I did, but
yeah,
like, if I was in their situation, if I was miserable, like I'd be asking everybody I could find who is really successful, like, help me understand what you did. Like, what are you so good at to help you get there? But a lot of these people, like, they don't do that. They just kind of slave away and they're not happy. And I don't know. It's weird. But I think the people who do sort of figure it out, like they're very curious and they will turn over every rock until they find the answer and they figure out, okay, that's what I can do. That's going to work for me.
yeah. That's the truth, and it's inspirational. I think a good segue here would be, what kind of activities has land flipping allowed you to do?
Yeah. Yeah. So really, it's mostly availability. Like,
Mhm.
like this whole morning today that we're talking, like I wasn't in the office most of the morning. I was out doing something else that I needed to do.
Mhm.
And if I was working a job, I would have to ask permission and take a half a day off. And I just got docked against my 2 weeks of vacation for the year. And just like that, I mean, it just feels like prison because it kind of is. And I'm not in that prison. I can kind of call the shots. That doesn't mean I can just like not do anything. But when I do have to work, like I really like what I'm doing. I mean, there's some things that are kind of slog, but at the end of the day, like I really look forward to going to work. Like I was so excited when I woke up this morning. It's like, yes, it's Monday. Awesome. I finally get to work. This would be so great. And
Yeah,
that perspective is a gift from God to be able to really enjoy what you're doing. And just having been through a career where that wasn't how I looked at it. Like I didn't look forward to Monday at all. And driving to work was super annoying. And most of my day was super annoying. So just knowing how much worse it can be and how good it is now, that's a great thing. And, like I'm there for my kids. Like I spend a lot of time with them and I know them really well and they know me really well. And if I was working at my job, like I would see them for like an hour a day, tops. Like I'd be gone before they woke up in the morning. And when I get home, I'd be there for about an hour before it's bedtime. Um, and that's what many people do. And man, I feel for them. Like I think that's not right, but that's the world we live in. But I don't have to do that. I get to be around my kids all the time. And my kids aren't annoying. They're really good kids. Like I really enjoy my time with them. So that's a huge blessing too.
You chose a different path. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, who influenced you? Like you talked just recently about, I would ask anybody if I was miserable, how did you do it? Like, how did you find land flipping? Who helped you get to where you are?
Yeah. Hundreds of people, honestly, lots and lots of people. And from different angles too. Like the people who influenced me in the real estate space are completely different than the people who influenced me in like the REtipster space. Just different, basically just finding people that I really looked up to. Like, I see what you're doing and I'm really impressed by that. I want to know more. I'm going to listen to anything you have to say so I can glean whatever I can and take that and spin it and make it my own and do what I can do with that. And sometimes I find out like, I'm just not good at what you're good at. So I'm not going to try to copy you and be you, but I see this little thing you're doing over there and I can do that. So I'm going to apply that to my life. So yeah, I mean, big names like Robert Kiyosaki, I'm trying to think who it was, Ken McElroy. He's another awesome guy. I actually don't do hardly anything that he does, but I just learned a lot from him in the beginning about real estate in general and different people in the self-storage space, different people in the land space. There's still not a ton of land people out there. Might be like a dozen of them, but I pay attention to all of them in different ways just to try to learn what I can from them. And and it kind of changes from year to year too. Like sometimes what the relevance that one person had 5 years ago may not exist anymore. Like I'm kind of doing a different thing than I used to, or they've changed. But it's just finding inspiration where I can.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's great, and I think this is gonna touch home with a lot of people. What are some, you say you have a lot more time with your kids, and so why is that like important? Like why is that so good?
Yeah. Well, I actually remember before I had kids, this is kind of just going on a tangent about myself here, but before I had kids, I didn't know if I wanted kids, honestly. And my wife was sort of on the same page. Like we didn't like, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. Like not everyone should be a parent. And we were kind of on the fence. Like we would have been fine if we never had kids, but when we finally decided to take the plunge and we had kids, like it just clicked instantly. Like I all of a sudden understood, this is what they're talking about. Like this is what people mean when they say they would die for their children or their children are the most important thing. Like it really is true. And once you experience it firsthand, I think it's like the greatest privilege of my life. Like I can't imagine not being able to do this. And I've got two. I would have gladly had like 5 or 6 or 7, but my wife was done. So, and she's kind of important in that decision. But yeah, I just found that like fatherhood was just a very natural fit for me, and I enjoyed it a lot and enjoy it a lot. And I've even got a little, like I started telling my kids stories from my head, like just making up stories before bed, and they liked it so much that I ended up making a podcast based on the stories that I would tell them before bed. It's called the Storyland Podcast. And it's got like music and sound effects and everything. And it's actually like kind of blowing up on the Apple podcast charts, which is crazy. But anyway, I couldn't have done any of that if I'd never had kids, because it brought out this new part of my brain that I didn't even know was there.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like some of my favorite people in the world to be with, not just because they're my kids, but like our personality just mesh well and we enjoy each other's company a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. I think a lot of people are going to resonate with this podcast because a lot of people are in what they call the dream that they sold everyone,
Yeah.
work till you're 65 and retire, then live your life.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when they see you being able to have the time freedom and the financial freedom that you have, I think they're going to resonate and it's going to make them think about it twice, hopefully inspiring some action in people to find that, to take action on that. So I want to, preface the ending here. What's your message and where can people find you to learn more?
Yeah, sure. There is a, in terms of my message, man, I mean, that could be a lot of different things, but I would just say, if you're someone who is kind of frustrated with where your work life is at right now, whether it's because you don't have the time or the money, or you just don't enjoy the work, or you just feel like this isn't everything, there's got to be something else for you. Like, I believe you and I get it. And you're probably right. There's probably something way better for you. And for me, the land business was a major, major part of that. I mean, a life-changing business in a lot of ways. It continues to impact a lot of the things I get to do today. And I never set out to look for land. I sort of saw it on a real estate forum back in 2008. And at first I was like, this is weird. Like, why would you buy land? That's crazy. But once I understood how you can get it for a massive discount, and when you buy anything that has a monetary value at a massive discount, it's not hard to make money on that thing, whether it's a car or jewelry or whatever. Land just happens to be the thing. And it's actually pretty easy to work with because you just, shifting paperwork around with deeds and that kind of thing. So I would say keep looking. And, you might want to take a look at land because it worked really well for me and a lot of people in our community. I'm not saying it's your destiny, but it might be worth a closer look. There's a blog post I put together that's basically like a free little course that's just in a blog post. It's like a video, a lot of resources on a website that links to a lot of different things. If you go to landflippinglifecycle.com, it'll take you to that blog post and you can learn a lot about it. But another thing, it's I think it was a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote or somebody like that.
Yeah.
Where I'm going to butcher it, but he says something to the effect of, whenever you do your work with your whole heart, you won't have any competition in that because most people don't do their work with their whole heart. They kind of do it begrudgingly, or they don't really care. But I've found that to be true in the things that I get to do because I really enjoy them. So it's not hard to do them with my whole heart because I love what I do. So whatever you choose to do with your life, like, make sure you love it enough to be the best at it, because if you're just average, you're very forgettable. You don't have staying power. If you can find something that you enjoy so much that, like, it's a joy to become the best at what you do, like, that's when the real magic happens. And sometimes it takes a bit of searching to find that, but it's out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love your message, Seth. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, you bet.
I appreciate you coming in the future. And
yeah, absolutely.
I enjoyed this conversation. And for anybody, please check out Seth Williams and REtipster.com.
You got it. Thanks.
Right. Bye, guys.
See ya.